Hello and welcome back to the Week in Nintendo right here on GVG. I'm your host, Steve Bowling, and this has been a pretty wild week for us Nintendo fans. We've had a lot to be happy about, a lot of new information coming out about games, and as we run up to the end of the year, we've had a ton of new releases for the Switch 2. So there's really a lot to keep you entertained if you've already picked up a Switch 2, and there's even more coming. Obviously, for the last couple weeks, my obsession has been Pokemon Legends ZA. I finally finished that game, and I'm in the post-game now. I'm not going to talk about it further. We already discussed Legends ZA last week, or at least I'm not going to go further into it this week. I do want to spend some time to solidify my thoughts a bit more on the game as I go further into the post game. There are a few things I still want to do, some Pokemon I want to catch, some quest lines I want to tidy up before I'm ready to give my final thoughts on the game itself. I'm really trying to go deep with this one, but I can tell you so far, my opinions are kind of all over the place. I haven't gathered them up, so we'll get further into that. But as I mentioned last week, John did some coverage on Plants vs. Zombies. As I'm recording this, that coverage went live today, and he had some pretty complex thoughts on that game as well. Basically, there are some issues with some of the art assets. The remaster is of questionable quality, and I picked it up myself, on launch to give it a shot. And I have to say, as somebody who is not really deep into the lore of Plants vs. Zombies, who really just wanted a new, more accessible version of this game, I really like it. I've been enjoying it. I'm admittedly extremely casual. This is just a game that I want to play in tabletop mode that doesn't require a ton of thought from me. It's just got a really satisfying core gameplay loop that I've enjoyed for years and years at this point, and having that available to me on the Switch 2 is all I really wanted. So I'm happy with what I got with this package. I'm still really liking it. I'm not going to give it a review score or anything because I haven't played it nearly enough to do that. But what I can say is that if you're a very casual PvZ fan, then there's, plenty to enjoy here. There is some kind of icky AI upscaled stuff, and there's the weird thing of like fake art that was used for the game that doesn't make a ton of sense. I do find that off-putting and strange. But if I'm talking about it just from a gameplay perspective, I really enjoyed it, and I'm continuing to enjoy the gameplay elements there. Plants vs. Zombies is a fantastic game, and, no amount of kind of weird nonsense going on with extras is going to change that for me. But the game itself, I think, is still a solidly fun time. So if you're super casual and you don't have access to this on other platforms, maybe it's worth trying out. But really what I recommend you do is either pause this episode, or after you're done watching the win or listening to it, go check out John's video where he dives deep into the nuance of this and make a more informed decision. He knows a lot more about the series than I do, but I can say I'm having fun with the game for now. And I've been busy with a ton of Switch 2 releases because we've had quite a few, right? We had Legends ZA, I picked up Plants vs. Zombies, I picked up Persona 3 Reload, and I picked up Power Wash Simulator 2 all this week. And I have some thoughts on all of those. I've played very little of Persona 3 Reload just because it's a more intensive ask from a time perspective. But as somebody who is unfamiliar with any other version of Persona 3, because I'm admittedly a complete noob when it comes to Persona, I have to say that I'm just really enjoying the first few moments that I've tried. The intro of the game is really cool. It's dripping with style, which obviously is true of Persona. And I know that there are frame rate issues with the game, but they didn't really bother me too much, though admittedly, I've not spent a ton of time with it. So maybe it gets worse the further you get in. I don't know. But right now, what I can say is that I just like it, and I don't have a base of comparison to anything else. And as someone who doesn't have that base of comparison, it seems fine. So we'll have to see. I know that Sega and Atlas are working to improve the frame rate in the Switch 2 version specifically. So maybe that will fix things up, or maybe it's already fixed and I just don't know. Like I said, I'm not really hooked in on Persona, but I'm pleasantly surprised by what I've started to play so far. Now, where I'm kind of unpleasantly surprised is with Power Wash Simulator 2. And I want to be clear because media literacy is dead, and a lot of, any negative take means a game is awful. I'm not saying Power Wash Simulator 2 is terrible. What I am saying is that I'm a bit disappointed with the features that I feel are missing from Power Wash Sim 2 on the Switch 2. I picked it up, played it, and kind of immediately just kind of reflexively expected Gyro to be in the game because it's such a simple game. You power wash stuff and you aim, and really the aiming is one more core to the gameplay than it is in just about any other quote unquote shooter. So I expected Gyro to not only be on by default, but to exist. And to my surprise, neither of those are true. It can't be on because it doesn't exist. The same is true of mouse controls. For a Switch 2 specific build, we don't have mouse controls, and I just find both of these things to be quite disappointing. Obviously, the core gameplay is the same as it is on other platforms, so, if you get that kind of satisfying feeling from cleaning stuff in Power Wash Sim 1, you're still going to have that with Power Wash Sim 2. And it's great for that. And admittedly, I played it on my Pro controller and still had a lot of fun, but I really desperately want Future Labs to add this functionality to the game. Now, I did read online from some other fans that functionality is on the way. I have no idea if that's true because I couldn't find an original post from the developers saying that it's on the way, but I saw multiple different people saying that they had said, at least mouse mode was in development for the Switch 2 version and would be coming in an update at some point. I hope that happens. I have no idea if it really is, but as it stands, this is a perfectly playable version. It does have a minor kind of hiccup issue, specifically when you're using soap. If you're using soap to wash something and then you wash it off, I've noticed every now and then the frame rate will just kind of very quickly drop and then come back up. It's enough to be noticeable, but moment to moment gameplay, you're really not going to see it too often. It's not going to become distracting, let's say. But I did notice it. It was noticeable and it's worth talking about. But all in all, it feels like a solid port. I just hope that they add some Switch 2 specific bells and whistles. Or even just give us Gyro, because I don't know for sure, but I think that Gyro is on the PS5 version. I could be wrong there. Gyro just feels like a very weird omission for a game like this. But those are the games that I've been playing. And like I said, we are on a path towards one of the best holiday seasons. I would argue that 2025 itself is one of the best years for gaming in history. It's just been so packed with releases. We got new Nintendo hardware. We've had great indies like Silksong and Hades 2 come out this year. And really, it just feels like no matter what platform you're really into, you've had something big to play on it. So let's go ahead and talk about what Switch 2 has coming for the rest of the year, because there's at least one title I'm really, really excited about and another one that I wish I was more excited for. Starting up, we have 2 Point Museum coming very soon. That's in a few days. We have Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D. And I gotta say, I played this already. I played it at PAX West 2025, and it was already amazing there. Having a couple more months to further refine and polish, I'm sure this game is going to blow people away. I certainly came away very impressed by it, and I'm not the world's biggest Dragon Quest fan, so I'd love to pick this up and play more of it when it comes out on the 30th. But really, what I'm going to be waiting for, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D have maybe a week for me, because Age of Imprisonment comes out on November 6th. And if you know me, you know that my love for Zelda is second to none. As far as gaming franchises go, I adore The Legend of Zelda. It is my favorite franchise that is still getting active entries to this day, more than anything else. I collect Zelda games. They're such a huge part of my childhood and what really kind of lit the fire in me for my love of gaming once I started playing Nintendo. So, yeah, I can't wait for a new entry. Age of Calamity was admittedly not my favorite. The story was not exactly it for me. I'm hoping that they kind of hew a bit closer to things that can at least be believably canon for Age of Imprisonment. I'm curious about the construct that kind of sort of resembles Link in what we've seen so far. I've already pre-ordered the Japanese Treasure Box edition for this game. I'm fairly certain I'm going to love it. It is a Warriors game, which is a genre that I already enjoy, and it's going to hopefully not have the performance issues that the Age of Calamity did on Switch 1. So Age of Imprisonment, super hyped for. That's probably going to get me through November, which, I mean, November is a packed month because after Age of Imprisonment, we have both an Atelier collection and the Yakuza Kiwami games that are coming out. We have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero finally dropping for the Switch 2. And then we have Kirby Air Riders, which I want to talk at length about. But obviously, real quick mention, Metroid Prime 4, final first-party game of the year on December 4th. And we have Assassin's Creed Shadows, which we just learned is coming out on December 2nd, just before that. But let's rewind and talk about Kirby Air Riders. I want to be excited for this game. I desperately want to understand the enthusiasm and excitement around this game. I was around for the original Kirby Air Ride because, surprise, I am old, but I don't remember, there being a whole lot of hype around that. I think it sold about a little over 1 million copies worldwide, and it feels a bit, I feel a bit at odds with reality when I look at Kirby Air Riders, because we had our second direct for that game this week. It was an hour long. And I understand that there are people out there who are A, Kirby fans, B, Kirby Air Ride fans, and C, Sakurai fans, and that all of them were likely very interested in this direct. And I am a casual Kirby fan at best, and I would never say I'm definitely not a Kirby Air Ride fan. And I am certainly, I don't necessarily believe in being a fan of a specific developer. I believe in being fans of their work. And so this is a work that I'm not super interested in, and I'm happy for everybody who's really interested in Kirby Air Riders. But I know even among the GVG team, there are those of us that are really excited for it. Daniel and Brandon are certainly two of them. And there are those of us that don't really get the hype. Let's say it that way. And I wonder where this is going to land for most people. I'm curious what you guys in the audience think about Kirby Air Riders, because I played it. I played it at PAX West 2025, and I just still came away very confused. There have been many games where I have not really understood them, then had an opportunity to play them, and then come away with a much more positive impression than I did before. The opposite is also true. There have been games where I have been very excited to play them, finally went hands-on and discovered that they weren't really for me after my hands-on time. This is a situation in which I feel like I don't know that there's a lot that Nintendo can do to convince someone like me that this game is going to be worth my time. And I feel like that's unfortunate, because at the core of it, when you write down what Kirby Air Riders is about on paper, it sounds like a lot of fun. A competitive, quote unquote, kart racer. Obviously, it's not necessarily that, but with customizable machines, a mode in which you can steal machines from others, kind of a more battle focused mode. All of that sounds really fun. But when I sit down and I pick up the sticks and I actually play this game, I just feel nothing. I don't feel excited about it. It doesn't grab me in any type of way. I'm just kind of, watching things go by, and it doesn't really get its hooks into me. And to be fair, I'm definitely not the target audience for something like Kirby Air Riders. Mario Kart World was also not my favorite, but I also was never really a huge kart racer fan. I've enjoyed them. I've had fun playing them with groups of friends, but ultimately I'm not the type of person that when I'm alone, I'm going to sit down and grind for additional costumes or anything in Mario Kart. I'm not going to, pick up Sonic Racing Cross Worlds and just play solos, and I don't like playing randoms online in most games either. So I just think that this is one of those things that will elude me. And I wish, though, that I could get excited for it. I'm in a weird position where I just really want to experience some of the hype that everyone else that I know that likes this game is experiencing, but I'm just not there with it. And I've seen people on Twitter raving about how exciting this game is, how Sakurai put everything he had into it. And I don't doubt that for a second. it's just the theme and the setting and the mechanics of the game don't really do a whole lot for me. So I'm kind of left just hoping that, everyone else who is ready to pre-order this game, buy it and enjoy it, ends up liking it. But the more I see of it, the less I want. And I wish it was different. I truly do. I wish that I could get into this game, but the new modes, like the top-down racing mode, didn't really interest me. It just feels like more of the same from the GameCube, and I tried that game back then, and I didn't really like it then either. So I think that this is one of those where it's going to be a pass for me, but I'm excited for those of you that are interested in it. But I'd love to ask those of you watching or listening a favor. Tell me why you're excited for this game. Like, give me the elevator pitch for somebody who's not a fan. Like, why should, how would you try to win someone over that isn't really feeling the game so far? That said, I still have an open mind. There's the global test race or the global demo for Kirby Air Riders, and I will be downloading and trying that when it comes out, I think in a couple weeks towards the early part of November. I'm still going to sit down and try it because I want to be wrong desperately. I want to be wrong about Kirby Air Riders. I want to fall in love with it. I want to play that game. But as it stands right now, that desire just doesn't exist. And maybe that'll change. But it feels to me like I'm happy that Sakurai is doing something that isn't Smash, as he's given multiple interviews in which he kind of says, I'm done with Smash. I'm tired of Smash. I want to do something else. And this is certainly something else. So for that, I'm happy. I'm happy that, one of the most respectable developers in the industry has an opportunity to do something that hopefully is a bit more creatively fulfilling. I don't know that he doesn't find Smash creatively fulfilling, but I do know he's publicly kind of said he wanted to do other stuff for quite a while now. So I'm hopeful that this was something that helped Sakurai recharge his batteries. And I certainly hope that if he wants to make other games that aren't Smash, that Nintendo does not make that difficult for him. I doubt they would, but I want to see, if you're in a creative position, I want you to create things you enjoy creating. But I'll probably be waiting until Metroid Prime 4 comes out to really get into this. And I want to take this opportunity to talk about what's going on in our mailbag, because we had quite a few questions about Air Riders, given that last episode, if you don't remember, I actually said that the Air Riders Direct was going to happen very soon. And what would you know? It did. That was a complete guess on my part, but it turned out to work very well. But we have quite a few folks in our mailbag who are asking about Sakurai, asking about Air Raiders, and asking about a big question regarding Halo. So let's go ahead and jump in there. If you'd like to be able to submit questions to our mailbag, you can head over to patreon.com/gvgaming to find out how. Let's go ahead and start with our first question. Now that we know Halo is coming to PS5, what would you say the wait is between its release and a Switch 2 release? And this is the interesting bit. So Halo is built, the new Halo, Campaign Evolved, is built from Unreal Engine 5. And there's kind of a misconception out there that Unreal Engine 5 games can't be put on Switch 2, which is just false. Unreal Engine 5 works on Switch 2. There are a handful of retail games out there now, most notably Fortnite, which is built in Unreal Engine 5, is on Switch 2. There is Chronos, the New Dawn, which was built in Unreal 5. Borderlands 4, which did get delayed, but is in development, is confirmed to be using Unreal Engine 5. And Split Fiction, which came out, which admittedly I didn't love the port of that, but that is also an Unreal Engine 5 game. So where are we? What does this leave us? Obviously, it's possible. And I'm of the mind that just about anything that appears on the Series S with proper work, it's not just hitting a button, but anything that you can scale down to the Series S can likely also appear on the Nintendo Switch 2. I don't think there's such a vast gulf in power between them. We've seen Xbox Series S games, running on Switch 2, obviously Street Fighter 6, Fortnite, lots of multi-platform games. The Series S is the closest comparator to the Switch 2, but it's worth noting that typically those games look a bit worse on Switch 2 than they do on Series S. But it's possible. It's doable. And so I would love to see Halo Campaign Evolved. That's just one of the worst names ever, on the Nintendo Switch 2, but I think it's going to take quite a bit of effort. And I think that they didn't show it off. From what I understand, they only showed the Xbox Series X running it. Gene Park from the Washington Post mentioned that it didn't run very well in his demos, but it also sounds like it was very early days. They had a single level demo available for people to check out. So I think that that's going to be kind of the issue there, right? It's too early to tell. And obviously Switch 2 dev kits are not super easy to come by. If you're Microsoft, you can probably get your hands on some, but they may have multiple different projects in the works. Obviously, they have an agreement to get Call of Duty onto the Switch 2 at some point, so it's really hard to say where their development efforts lie. I would say that if we're going to get it, it would be at least a year from release, so maybe 2027. It's really hard to say because Microsoft hasn't really been giving the Switch 2 much attention, so I guess we'll have to find out. But yeah, my bet would be 1 year. To give them time to get the game, get it out the door, get any issues ironed out, and then either get some other third party to port the game or to work on it in-house separate from their current actual development efforts. But we'll find out. Next year, it's supposed to release on PS5 and Xbox and PC. And Microsoft has said that the Switch 2 is a priority for them. So I guess we'll find out together. But thank you for the question. Next up, we have Tux Peng, who writes, which of these do you think gets revealed first for Switch 2 and why? 3D Mario, a new Animal Crossing, or Luigi's Mansion 4? All of these are basically inevitable, but I'm very curious how they'd position them release-wise. And I think this one is going to be, I think you listed them in order, to be honest. 3D Mario is absolutely coming first. The reason I believe that is because we have the Mario Galaxy movie coming out soon. Nintendo is likely going to want to get a new 3D Mario out in front of audiences as quickly as they can to capitalize on the hype of the movie. So while it will not release likely in time for the theatrical release, they'll probably try to time it as close to the home video release as they can, or the streaming release, or whatever. And a new Animal Crossing, I think, makes a lot of sense to go from there. And the reason why I think that is because the Switch 2 itself was very obviously designed with COVID in mind. And, what happens when people have to isolate, when people can't talk to each other the way they used to? The existence of game chat kind of shows like they looked at people on Zoom calls and people interacting online this way and thought, what if we had a vehicle for that? We could have put ourselves in the position Zoom was in of becoming like the de facto platform for people to communicate with one another. And in the absence of face-to-face contact, Nintendo is driving game chat way hard, like way harder than they probably should. Because I think it's a feature that while it is, inherently neat, I don't think a lot of people are buying the Switch 2 webcam. I don't think a lot of people are hopping on video calls with their friends while they play games. I think that it is one of those things that looks good in a commercial, but doesn't really play out that way. Like, I think Nintendo maybe got a little bit arrogant with this one, because I remember looking at people sliding Joy-Con off in the original Switch commercials and thinking, nobody's going to do that. And realistically, we did. We ended up doing that, despite our better judgment or whatever. I think Nintendo probably thought, like, we'll show people using this webcam and they'll buy the webcam because they see it in the commercial. And I will admit, I bought the webcam, but I'm staring at it right now and I can't remember the last time I used it. I've got another one upstairs hooked up to the Switch 2 dock upstairs, and I've never used it. I barely use game chat, which is unfortunate. I think game chat's great, but none of my friends registered for it. So none of the people on my Switch 2 friends list actually registered for game chat. They just don't. I struggled to get people to hop on. So I think that but I think Nintendo, long way of making this point is that Nintendo set up, some development priorities around things they saw during the COVID era. And Animal Crossing was a runaway hit. It sold Switches to people who didn't want them. And so I think that internally within Nintendo, you see that success and you go, we need to fast track another game. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next Animal Crossing is a lot further along than we think. Now for Luigi's Mansion 4, I don't know what Next Level has been working on, but I think it would be foolish to take the franchise away from them after how fantastic Luigi's Mansion 3 was. And we got Luigi's Mansion on GameCube on October 30th coming. That is, for the record, some of the best news ever. But October 30th, we got that, and we will probably get another Luigi's Mansion around spooky season. So I would suspect, if it doesn't happen in 26, it's happening in 27. And I think there's a non-zero chance that in 27 we could get all three of these games. But thank you for the question. Next up, we have Becca, who writes, are you pre-ordering Metroid Prime 1 through 3, a visual retrospective, and do you enjoy art books for games? I have not pre-ordered this yet, and it is strictly because I have a really stringent holiday shopping policy. I try not to buy things for myself when we get this close to the holidays because I am notoriously bad about buying myself things. So I try to leave opportunities for people who want to give me gifts, and I've not pre-ordered this. So do I like art books about games? Yes, I love them. I don't have a ton of them, unfortunately, but I have like some Phantasy Star Online art books. I have some Zelda art books. I have all of the Zelda encyclopedias. So I have a ton of Zelda books, but yeah, I really enjoy seeing anything behind the scenes. In fact, I know this is a Nintendo podcast, but I really want to take a look at that PlayStation 30th anniversary book that shows all the prototypes. Anything that kind of peels back or pulls back the curtain on game development is something that I'm really interested in. So yeah, I would pick it up. I love those games, but I love books on games that I love, and Prime 1 through 3 are amazing games. So I would love to see that, but I'll give someone the opportunity to buy it for me. And if they don't, I'll do what I always do and go and buy it myself. Thank you so much for the question. We've got Natalie, who writes, with Sakurai outright stating that Kirby Air Riders will not be receiving any post-launch DLC. What would you like to see him working on next? I've seen people suggest that he might not be working on DLC because he's going to get right into the Smash Mines, but I want to know what you think. Either way, it's very refreshing to have a multiplayer game like Air Riders not have DLC, and it feels like Sakurai really poured all he could into this game. Let's see, and we're going to couple this with another question. Do you feel like the complexity of the Kirby Air Riders amiibo will be a one-time thing, or do you think they will keep making such complex amiibo with multiple parts you can swap, or another trick they could add in the future? So let's go ahead and tackle these both in turn, right? So obviously I've been pretty clear that I'm not the world's biggest Kirby Air Riders fan yet. And I think that is not going to change, but I'm going to keep an open mind. But I will say that I absolutely love a multiplayer game with no DLC. As somebody who came up in the NES and SNES and, 32-bit eras, it is nice to see games as a finished package when they ship. I don't think there's anything wrong with a game being a complete package when it ships. Make all the content you want to make and be done with it. I don't think that is a bad thing whatsoever. I think as multiplayer games go, it can be a bit tiresome to be constantly asked to open your wallet for new things. And I say this as someone who plays a lot of Fortnite. I don't love every time, something comes out in the shop and I'm like, dang, I got to have that. Or, games like fighting games these days, you have season passes every single year for 5 years sometimes. We're in year 3 of Street Fighter 6, a game that I absolutely love, but I feel like to get the complete game, you have to buy all of these annual passes. And that means either one, you're going to be 5 years late to the game and buy an anniversary edition once the community has moved on to something else, or you're going to end up buying you're going to buy these packs as they come out for $20 or $30, and then your $60 game becomes a $200 game over the years. So I like the restraint. I like the idea that we don't have to constantly monetize our user base. We can sell them the game one time and then walk away from it and say, we hope you like what you bought. Enjoy it for the rest of your life as it is. I think that's fine. I think that's a good thing. And I respect Sakurai for doing that. I respect Nintendo for letting him do that, because not every game needs an endless flow of DLC, and we should really divorce ourselves from the notion, or disabuse ourselves of the notion, that we have to get constant updates for a game, that a game has to be in the conversation all the time. It's okay for games to exist, be great, and then, fade from the collective consciousness until somebody brings it up in an interesting way. But yeah, I think this is great. And as far as what Sakurai works on next, first off, Sakurai should work on whatever he wants to next. That's what the true answer to that question is. But my personal hope is that he goes to Kid Icarus. I'm not ready for a new Smash. I'm not the world's biggest Smash fan either, surprise. But I do really think that Sakurai should work on whatever, if I had my own say, if I could sway him one way or the other. I think Kid Icarus Uprising deserves a Switch 2 port. A mouse mode port of Icarus Uprising would be amazing. It was a hard game for me to play because I'm left-handed, so I didn't find it very comfortable to play. I would love a more accessible version of that game on modern hardware with modern graphics. That would be great. So that would be my hope. But if he wants to do Smash, let him Smash. And with the Amiibo for Air Riders, I think this is a one-off. I don't think we're going to see like mix and match Amiibo anytime soon. I think it's because it's kind of core to the mechanics of the game, the idea that you can swap riders and machines freely, that rather than make 20 or 30 different Amiibo to come up with all the combinations, they just made this kind of locking system for them, which I find interesting from a technical perspective, because there's some kind of data passed through there. Like, it knows when you scan the Amiibo which rider is on the machine and which machine the rider is attached to. So I think from a technological perspective, they're pretty neat. It sounds like they may end up being wildly expensive. I saw some people estimating that it will be $250 for the whole set, and that feels like a lot to ask, even from the most enthusiastic Air Riders fans. So I don't think they're going to do stuff like that, but I think Amiibo always go for novelty. We had the Yarn Yoshi Amiibos. We had that one Metroid Amiibo where it was squishy. I think Nintendo, where it makes sense, they make special Amiibo. And so I think we'll see other kind of quote unquote gimmicks in the future, but I think it'll just be, does it tie into the gameplay, or is it an interesting rendition of a character, right? So I don't think they're going to change Amiibo too much. Amiibo still feel like something that's kind of on life support. So, we'll see. All right, we're going to do one more question and then we're going to call it. This one is an interesting one. Which Pokemon did you end up using for your Legend ZA team? Did you use any that you were surprised you became attached to / became more fond of? I'll be honest, I'm a Pokemon old head. I've been playing since the original Red and Blue, and I try to stick to those roots as much as I can. So I caught a Pichu that I evolved into a Pikachu, that I evolved into a Raichu very early, and he stayed with me throughout. I have a Sylvia, or an Espeon. I'm sorry. I have an Espeon that, again, I caught an Eevee pretty early on and evolved it into an Espeon. I had, but the rest of them, where they were newer, I felt less attached. So I have a legendary Pokemon that I won't name, so I don't spoil anything in my party currently. I picked up Emboar Tepig, and then evolved him all the way up to Emboar. I have a Blastoise in my party, and I have a Gardevoir. So I stuck pretty close to the original 151 as much as I could. And they're all Pokemon that I have a long and storied history with at this point. So I tried to stick with the classics, but I'm still mixing in some new, different Pokemon, because I don't want to kind of write off Pokemon that weren't from games that are near and dear to my heart. But I'll talk more about Legends ZA next week when I can give you some post-game impressions. we'll either have a video or an episode of the Week in Nintendo based primarily around that. But thank all of you so much for hanging out with me for another episode of the Week in Nintendo. It is time to sign off. I appreciate all of you watching. Again, if you subscribe to GVG and ring that notification bell, you'll be the first to know when we have a new episode. But if you'd like to get them even quicker, head over to patreon.com/gvgaming, where for as little as $5 a month, you can get early access to each and every episode of the Week in Nintendo in audio form. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. I hope you're happy, safe, and healthy wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.